Digital Data Hub, getting to proof of value faster. In this episode, Jim Barker, the Chief Revenue Officer at Cooperative Computing, explains why the Digital Data Hub helps organisations move from disconnected information to practical action. You'll learn how connected data supports automation, why proof of value matters, and how digital people help teams learn while work gets done. I'm your co-host Anthony Pearl, and whether you're just starting your digital journey or looking to accelerate your existing efforts, it's time to get enabled digitally. Jim, I want to talk to you about the Data Hub. That is a big thing for you guys as well. And explain to me how it actually works, because I think this whole idea is kind of this mythical beast for a lot of people going, we've got a lot of data, it's kind of out there. But what does it mean to actually have this hub, and how does it actually work?
Yeah, it's so I'll tell you where it came from, Anthony. We years ago, we would go into organizations and we would realize they had all these data problems, and the way that we would have to fix it at that point in time would be to go out and say, oh, you need to implement a data warehouse. And so to implement a data warehouse, there's a financial commitment, there's a time commitment, everybody needs to mow on, all these things go into it. And it got to where we couldn't get to the proof of value fast enough. And so because of that, it lingered on. We had a couple of projects we did. They were like 7, 8, 9-month projects. We're not opposed to long projects like that. We know a new ERP implementation is going to take timing like that. But what we realized was the whole time we're taking the time to help them do all of this, it's building it out and everything. But then even when we would get them deployed, they would expect us to then say, hey, we're not prepared to manage it. We're not and so we ended up becoming the administrators on that. So we said hey, look, if that already exists in the market, we should come up with our own platform and be able to go to market and take that platform market. So what we did was we looked at, at the time, there were data lakes were coming on like mad. Everybody in the world's got a data lake offering now that's, you can just pull unstructured data into your data lake, and now you've got it all. There were data warehouses coming on like crazy. So now we pull that data in and we'll structure it and give you phenomenal reporting tools, and you can have Power BI and everything else in the world that can throw up dashboards for everybody in the organization. And we were doing those things consistently for clients. What we realized was, okay, one is those things take time. They then have to decide. There was licensing to the software vendors. There's all these things that go on around security and compliance and all. There's just a bunch of work that goes into it. It's taking it longer to get there. So we said, we at the time, we had a couple of clients that we were dealing with that had some pretty key issues that we felt like, okay, if we can help get a digital data hub in play, if we can get this platform in play, our platform in play, we can orchestrate and automate a lot more things because our automation is built within the platform. And so that's what we did. So as we rolled it out, what it allowed us to do was act quicker, because we could get up and say, look, we don't have to go through 50 layers of governance and going through, different software vendors, platforms, all this stuff. And so we got it up, and it was really in test environments initially. We put it in test environments initially. People could see, oh my gosh, you guys were able to pull data that I've been trying to pull for 4 years. In 90 days, you were able to pull all this data in, and with 120 days, you were already actioning based upon the data that I've been telling everybody for 4 years I can never get to, and there was no way we'd ever make this happen. And so that's how it came about. When we started realizing the capabilities of really actioning and orchestrating what would happen through the digital data hub, through building out that automation, going, oh, okay, what else? And as Anthony kept piling on, yeah, and if they could do this, and then go ahead and do this, and help it, and then if they could do this, and all we did was just start capturing, going, okay, let's just start building towards that. As we start building towards that, this concept of what we talked about around digital people started coming more to light for us, because we realized, oh my gosh, we're actually building the functions of these people that they're needing right here. And so what it allows us to do is it allows us to get in with quick, I'll say quick penetration into an organization, because it's quickly we can get to value pretty quickly. And it's not someone saying, hey, you need to spend $1 million and get a data warehouse, and it's going to take 12 to 18 months to deploy it, and everybody that's admins on every platform around here is going to have to devote 600 hours of their time next year to helping us pull. And we don't operate that way. So we send in our data team. Normally we say, hey, let's go through a vetting process with our data team to whatever degree you're comfortable. We'll go through that process. So we'll have our data team evaluate data data scientists, we have data engineers, data analysts, different resources, architects, and the like. And so they'll go through and go, okay, let's go pull just the data that we need to action on it, which really helps, because what it was doing back in those days was everyone would argue, like, why do they need all that data? Why do they need all that data? And now we don't. Now it's like, hey, you're trying to perform this function in your business to get that result. Your organization's aligned behind it. If I don't need all that data, I don't need, just give me access to the data that I need to perform this function, and then we can go perform the function. And so that's been the I would say, quick proof of value, where we can go in and get hit and make something happen pretty quick. When we first started standing up these digital people, we did them as pilots. We just set it up, say, hey, why don't you just let us do a test pilot and set it up? And we would start setting these pilots up and getting them running. And within 90 days, we had some up and running, our first few, and people were like, oh my gosh, I didn't think that you could do these kinds of things this quick. And so now we've gotten it down to a rotation where it's, rinse or repeat. We know they're going to set in this role. We know the systems they're going to need access to. We just need to understand the data, where it resides, and how we're going to get it pulled in and all of that. But anyway, so it's been exciting for us. It's actually something that's really helped us build. If we think about, these organizations building their own human talent, and now having human talent that can bring in this digital talent, start telling this digital talent what they want to do, and know that it can be done faster than they can actually get it done. It's like, I think about just the mere examples that I've used of where my digital people can work faster than me in doing things. And I'm going, golly, I never thought of it. As far as, I'm not, it's kind of like saying I'm going to build a sports team. And if you're not the fastest person, hey, it's not a bad thing. You can get fast people on your team. So surround yourself with faster people. And so that's kind of what it's at least given us the idea of the experience of that, and also giving our clients some of that experience too, where they can see now, wow, this thing can get this done much quicker than I could on my own.
Give some examples, Jim, of walking into an organization. What are the first things that you see, and what are the first things that you can deploy in terms of both the digital people and getting them into that digital data hub? How does that, actually play out for some of these guys?
Normally, I tell you, when we go through, if we go through and do just some digging, in a lot of cases, we can figure out where is turnover. And wherever there's turnover, there's usually something going on there. Now, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you got leadership issues. You may have different things taking place. We found one that was not in a good area of the building, believe it or not. It's like, if you don't have good AC on that end of the building, that's probably not a good thing. But in a lot of cases, when you have turnover around your people, because it's not super attractive jobs, it's not things that people are jumping up and down excited about. In fact, Anthony, you and I spoke about this last year when my youngest daughter, had taken the job. I think I told you, she took a job that was the one in the middle of the three, and it was distantly second to it had a good distance in pay from the first one. And I told you, capitalist dad's going, what in the world? And as I talked to her, she's like, I really want to do what that top job did. And I'm like, well, what did you not like about it? She started explaining to me, it's like office work and this and that. And she wasn't getting to visit with people. She loves people. She's big-hearted. She's humanitarian to the family. She loves helping people. And she's like, Dad, I was going to be behind a computer a lot more than I really wanted. And so it's like, okay, I guess so. And she's doing great at her job, by the way. But the reality is that, look, there's an element of, she would have been miserable going into that top paying job. And I knew it. By the time she was done, she was smart enough and wise enough at that point to say, it's not what I'm going to do. But there's probably a lot of us, I'll say us, because I probably did, growing up too. I'll just take the job because it's the highest paid job, and I'll just be miserable as long as I need to be miserable to make the money I need to make. But the reality is I'm not very happy. And so I'm always looking for something else. So first place we usually start to say, where's the biggest turnover area of the business, and what's going on there that's usually causing it? And then the second thing is, it's usually like once we get into, visiting with different leaders in the organization, we'll just ask, where do you have the most challenges? And with the minute you hear one of them talk about people, they'll say, oh, Jane's role back there. No one wants to do Jane's role. It's like, okay, it's those types of areas. So we try to go in and first just say, let's win over the workforce by giving them somebody that wants to do the work that they don't want to do to begin with. And as it plays out, it's really, and when you take that approach too, what we found is they're all more incentivized to help you get to the place you want to go. So it's like you're not trying to push a rope. You got people that are pulling you, going, man, and you can really, if you guys can do this, it's going to be great for me. I'm not going to have to do this any longer. So people will help you a lot, knowing that there's some place for them to grow if they can get that function done. But they're never going to get it's one of those things where one of the guys in this group, I'll never forget, about a year ago, told me, he said, he said, honestly, I've been in this for over 3 years. I thought my growth would be outside this company. I never thought I'd be able to grow inside the company. And I said, really, why? And he said, well, because I'm confined into this area back here doing this. And there's only a handful of people that know I even exist. Whoa. I bet the leadership didn't think of it that way. I bet they didn't want it that way. That's for sure. But the reality is that's what he's feeling. And so this is someone talking to us as we're building a digital person for the role, to serve his role. This is someone talking, saying, I didn't really plan on staying around this place. I was going to be here as long as I need to make the money, but as soon as something better came along, I was ready to move on. And so I'll say, it all depends on where you start. If you'll start there, what we found is, at least when we start there, we get a lot more buy-in, a lot more energy. Now, by the way, they also talk a lot. So, in this gentleman's case, the reason I bring that up is this gentleman, by the time we got done with that one digital person, for him, we had 2 more that other people wanted. And a lot of it was because of him mentioning it. William was outspoken about, at the coffee, he's going to the coffee pot. And if he's going to the coffee pot, he's talking about what we're doing over here. And all the while, Linda over there's going, wait a second, what? We kind of need that over in this area too. And so that's the way that's helped us the most, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about those kinds of little areas. And I imagine there's also people who are looking to retire and nobody really wants that job, and they're very set in their ways about how they did it. And so they're key areas where you can come in and make those changes. So how quickly do you see results when you start implementing some of these things? And give me some examples of what that looks like for people.
Instantaneous. What it'll look like is, and I say instantaneous because the result, they go to work. So when they're going to work, they're actually performing the function. The reason I say instantaneous is because usually within the first 2 or 3 days, people figure out that the quantity of work, and quality for that matter, because remember, this is all driven by very stringent SOPs around, this is exactly what this person's going to do, which really means, if you think about like a job description, it's funny to me because we go into these organizations sometimes and you can't find SOPs anywhere. And these are sometimes big organizations, $1 billion plus organizations. And you go and talk and say, hey, Anthony, so what do you do around here? Oh, I work for Jim. So talk me through what your typical day looks like. And it's like, you describe it one way. Later on, you go talk to Jim, say, hey, so what's a typical day around here? And Jim describes it something totally different. And oh, by the way, your onboarding was walk 2 weeks with Jim. He'll teach you everything. And then they throw you to the wolves and it's like, okay, so it's still very bizarre to me that organizations don't have as much documented around methods and procedures. But the minute we have the methods and procedures well documented and this automation in place for the digital person, then that function goes quick. So in minutes, Leah, in that case, Leah is responding to those bids. And what that sales team told us was the average it took them was about 2 hours to pull apart the bids, the bid request, to go identify where the availability was, to then work on what it would cost to build the other 2 trucks because they didn't have those 2, anyone that's going to serve that market. And then they have a methodology around how they don't charge them for the whole truck. They're gonna share the work. There'll be an upcharge for it for that period of time, but they're working on trying to pay that off. But when you think about that and things are happening in minutes, that's when people start realizing, oh my gosh. Now I will tell you, in that environment, it gets kind of scary because then you start thinking, oh my gosh, then they get out of control. And there's some elements of them calling us in going, okay, talk us through this to make sure that we're really comfortable with it. And so, you have to go back through governance and okay, there's no way that Leah could do anything like that because she doesn't have access to that. There's no way Leah could do this because she's not accessing it, whatever that might be. But the quick math is you can do the math. I mean, if one of these digital people cost $1,000 to $1,500 or so, depending on if there needs to be voice involved, if they're going to be in Teams meetings and all that. It's like if that's how much it is a month, what heck, the person's going to cost more than that. And usually it's 5 times as much. In a lot of cases, you have to get 2 or 3 people because you're covering shifts, and so it's like, okay, we just got one Leah now, and she's doing the work of 3 people, and she's doing it 24/7, 365. And it's very consistent, and I feel really confident that she's not going to mess up because she's been given specific rules. Now, Jim, imperfect Jim over there, he's going to fat finger something. He's going to do something wrong at some point, and we're going to, give grace because we know he's human and he makes mistakes like the rest of us. But with digital people, it's like, hey, if there was a mistake, it was a mistake because someone did not map the rule properly. It's like, you built the engine, so the mistake is going to be yours. Let's just make sure that we go through a proper UAT and test the heck out of it, which we do a lot of as well.
I was going to say, there's a couple of things there that's really interesting because, certainly I think we've all of us that have played with some form of an AI, whether it's a chat GPT or whatever it might be, does get mistakes that happen, right? So you think you've told it, make sure you do this. I think the classic is around the M dash, right? Because that's kind of a giveaway that people know that it's been written by an AI. So
Yeah.
It's usually the first thing that I tell my AI, make sure you do not use the M dash. And yet it still comes back and it's still in there on a regular basis. So that ability for AI to make mistakes is still there, right? So you still have to have some level of watching and governance for that, I imagine.
That's right.
And I think backing onto that as well is how much do you keep teaching it in an overall sense? Because if you've got Leah deployed on 10 different organizations, they're not interacting with one another and learning in that sense, but you're might be taking some high level learnings, I gather, and saying from each of those without giving, discrete information away, but in order to be able for Leah to learn to be able to do more. And so the next time it's deployed or even it's deployed within organizations, it's learning. Is that true?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Very much a learning. And I'll tell you, not only are the digital people learning, the organization's learning too. Because what they'll end up doing is they'll start learning where they have gaps, where things start happening for them that they go, oh, wow, why that? Well, it's because this is how this is set up. And so they'll identify that, there's this little rabbit hole that goes down here that no one ever knew existed. Then maybe there was a mistake 2 times in the last 5 years on, but it may have been something that cost them money. And so we're seeing some of that just kind of start showing up where people are like, oh yeah, we forgot about that. Okay, well, we need to guard against that because we don't want another mistake. Because now that you got someone that could do 3 times the work of the people that were doing it, you don't need 2 a month. Let's stay with the 2 a year and let's try to limit those 2 a year and make sure they don't happen anymore.
How do you take the learnings though, Jim, from an organization that is and make it so high level enough that you can make Leah smarter for everyone? How do you actually do that? Because it's a fine line, right?
Yeah. Anthony, I would say I'll reserve that one for Kramer for one of your upcoming sessions with him because he can go into the learning model really well. It gets deep, but he goes into it really well, and it's pretty interesting.
I think it's a fascinating area for a lot of people because I think it is one of the interesting things about this whole idea of learning and making sure it's learning the right things. And that's one other thing that I wanted to ask you about to kind of wrap up this discussion is that if Jim programs in and tells Leah to say, oh, make sure that every time you do this, that you also do that. And it turns out that that you asked it to do, you actually got it wrong. So how do you put some safety mechanisms in place to make sure, and how do you reverse something if it's been taught to do one thing and then you've got a reverse course for whatever reason? I mean, sometimes regulations and things change as well. So there are very valid reasons why you might have to change tact.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that we've, I want to think through that because I don't know that I've experienced much of that directly with a client yet. I would say we probably experienced it a little bit, some with ourselves early on. But I say the main thing is the governance around who can ask Leah to do what is really important. And then the design, look, this isn't like I'm going to change Leah's whole role tomorrow. This is usually like, I don't need her. I'm going to restrict her from talking to this client because we're working through a really tough situation with this client. And oh, by the way, I'm not sure we want to sell more to this client. So I'm going to restrict, some things like that can be done pretty easily. The this and that you were talking about, I don't know that I've experienced that yet. I don't know that we've had enough of these under our belt, 12 to 18 of them, that we've had much feedback there around, we actually asked, Leah to do this after she did that. And it's like, now we really didn't want that, or it's the improper person asked her to do it, whatever that might be. I will say, though, they have a lot of fun putting her on Teams meetings. So they'll ask her silly questions, but she'll come back and say, and I'm on a couple of those meetings, but she'll come back and say, oh, thank you for asking that question, Jim. I'm going to have to refer to Todd to answer that question for you. Hold for a moment while I get Todd on. It's like, so there'll be some things like that that's like, okay, if they ask about this is where the barrier stops. And it's like, okay, let me get somebody on the phone that can help with something like that.
Well, that's all we have time for in this episode, but next time Jim's going to look ahead to the future digital organisation and the capabilities every business will need to compete. You'll hear why the digital-first thinking, hyper-automation, hyper-personalisation and data-driven decisions are becoming essential, and how the Digital Data Hub provides the foundation for more agile, intelligent and profitable growth. We've created a workbook to accompany this episode of the podcast with questions for you to answer, key quotes, and some action steps to follow. Check out the show notes for the link to be able to download your copy. Check out the show notes as well for links, resources, and more details from today's episode, including how to get in touch with Cooperative Computing. This podcast is produced by my team at podcastdoneforyou.com.au, helping professionals share their expertise through powerful podcast content. If you found value in today's episode wherever you're tuning in, please like, share, comment, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And remember, if you want the best from your business, you need to get enabled digitally.